Hi, I'm Jamie Abner with Family First Adolescent Services. I just heard Reggie speak here at the SEL and Wellness Conference, and I had to meet him immediately because it was so refreshing to hear somebody talking about trauma and relationships and the importance of connection with some of these kids, and also the prevalence of mental health. So it was great. I immediately introduced myself to Reggie because I was very excited to hear him bringing awareness to those things and talking about solutions for how to kind of implement and fix some of those issues that we're seeing with kids today.
He graduated in 2009 from MBA and actually was awarded the Gentleman Scholar Athlete Award, which is one of our most prestigious awards. As a lifelong fellow East Nashvilleian, I arrogantly thought I knew what it meant for him to come to MBA, the ups and downs of his being in this environment. Since then, I have celebrated his successes at Vanderbilt, both as an undergrad and a graduate of the Owen School of Business. I have danced with him at his wedding, with Madame O'Connell as well. I've cried with him in my living room. I've held his hand at funerals. Reggie is my family. What I wish I had known back then. How I didn't know what I didn't know. And how often I think of how I failed him as a teacher. Now the student is teacher, and I'm so honored to welcome him back to MBA. Reggie D. Ford is a sought-after motivational speaker and the best-selling author of PTSD, Perseverance Through Severe Dysfunction, and his latest venture is an amazing podcast called Vulnerability Muscle. By sharing his captivating journey of turning pain into peace through the process of perseverance, Reggie motivates positive change in all of those he encounters. Through his work, he helps individuals and organizations embrace vulnerability and persevere through pain points that are impeding our success. He is a first-generation graduate and former D1 football player at Vanderbilt, and he brings a diverse perspective to his role as entrepreneur, as philanthropist, as a mental health advocate, and a social activist. He's also a certified yoga instructor, and he runs Road Street Wealth Management. But most of all, Reggie, although decades younger than I, is one of my mentors, and I am so excited for you to hear from him today. So welcome.
If you can hear, say persevere. I gotta hear it. If you can hear, say persevere. There we go. I did not expect that kind of intro, and so I'm teared up a little bit. So y'all bear with me as I gather my emotions today. But perseverance is something I talk a lot about. There was a time in my life where I felt like I actually couldn't do that anymore. See, I found myself lying on a cold hardwood floor, crying my eyes out as my wife tried to console me. Having had only a few hours of sleep in a month, I was physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted. The million thoughts running through my mind were muddled, and the words that I spoke were incomprehensible. I was consumed by grief, overwhelmed by the depression and anxiety that bombarded my mind. And I got to this point where I had this out-of-body experience, and I looked down at myself. And I asked the question, how in the world did you end up here? And my journey since that point has been answering that question. And the thing that came to my mind was that it had been an impact of a lot of the childhood trauma and adversity that I had experienced that had been left unaddressed all of my life up to that point. And so ever since that moment, I got up off the ground and I was committed to finding that perseverance again, to being resilient, to being the person that is standing up here today. I talk about the process of perseverance. The process of perseverance is from pain to passion, passion to purpose, purpose to power, power to peace. And that peace is what I want for you, for your students. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And so we know that there is a lot of mental health issues that are facing our children today, right? Anxiety levels are at an all-time high. Suicide rates are increasing. Depression, right? Mental health professionals on campuses are noticing that their students are facing the worst mental health crisis of our time. This is the reason why we have great organizations like TAIS that put on SEL and wellness conferences so that you can build the school skills and tools to help your students build that resilience and perseverance so that not only are they going to be great students and go achieve academically and professionally, but they're going to be great people who can manage their emotions, who can hold interpersonal relationships and be healthy and happy throughout their entire lives. So I'm going to help you, hopefully, with a couple of tools, a couple of tips throughout today to get there. A little bit about me. Since that moment, it's been apparent to me that it was important to become trauma-informed myself as I help others in becoming trauma-informed in their approach to talking to young people, addressing young people, right? Certified in ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, which I'll talk a little bit about later on today. Also a certified yoga instructor, which Annie B mentioned, with a trauma-informed lens. And that's been something that has been a part of my journey for the last 10 years. Practicing and now teaching yoga has been life-changing for me. And there's a lot of studies. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk is a great scientist who wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score, which talks a lot about the impacts of yoga on the body and how it helps to transform that trauma into some of the peace that we're searching for. Right? I'm a mental health first aider, as well as trained in building resilience and managing mental health and anxiety.
I'm Bailey Moats. I'm the Georgia Family Ambassador for Family First Adolescent Services in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. I think when Reggie began to speak about his own personal experiences and giving that vulnerability, where he was talking about an experience where he had a really tough time before coming into school, which obviously affected how he presented in school, and got into a physical altercation, which kind of was out of his character. And it really made me resonate, especially when working with adolescents, with colleagues, with people in the community. You really never know what people are going through before you spend your time with them. So it's important that you see them for who they are, understand where they come from, and really try to build a genuine connection with every individual that you interact with. I think in providing residential care for adolescent boys, it's really important to take into that mental well-being piece for our providers. We have a client to staff ratio of 3 staff for every 1 client. So we just know that we really need to surround these kids and really embrace their stories and help them learn how to navigate and overcome them, but also make it a part of who they are. And so it's exciting to take it back to our providers and just tell the team why we do the work that we do. And working with adolescent boys, we work with a lot of mental health providers, a lot of schools, and we just really want to be a resource for anyone that works with adolescents and families and help support and guide them through this process. I know it's a really difficult one to navigate when you're experiencing a lot of heavy emotions. So just being a resource and having people hear the message and take it and apply it to their own life, and sharing the good message with those that surround them. I think that anyone working with adolescents or families, or those just trying to kind of come to terms with their own personal well-being, whether they're a young adult, an elder adult, a child, whoever, I think just hearing Reggie's story allows us to connect with ourselves and resonate with the message and apply it to our own lives. And so I think, school professionals are so important, mental health professionals, high-achieving professionals, whatever it could be, we can all take it and apply it to our own lives. And yeah.
So this is where we're going to go today, right? 9 tools for promoting mental well-being for your students. 3 tips, 3 broad themes on building resilience that you can take with you, and 1 story of perseverance. My story starts right here in Nashville. I am a unicorn. I hid my horn for today, but I was born to a 14-year-old mother right there to my left. And my father, who's on her left, spent most of my childhood in prison. And if you can imagine what it's like to grow up to a kid, freshman in school, there's a lot of challenges with that. Challenges also compounded by the impacts of poverty and living in violent neighborhoods. I can remember one of my first memories ever was being handed a bottle like this, being told to go to the bathroom and pee in it so that somebody could pass a drug test. My little baby pee was used for those things. I remember being so young and naive and not understanding that grandpa was not supposed to hit grandma, but that was normal. In fact, I learned this in the process of writing my book, but when my mom was born, my grandmother took my mother to my grandfather, and instead of welcoming her with open arms, he pulled out a gun and started shooting at them. That was the type of lifestyle that I was born into. And again, my father, he was off doing his thing. He was trying to raise money for whatever he was doing, and so he was in the streets. Didn't spend much time with me other than to drop me off a pair of shoes and hit the streets again. And so what that did for me as a young person, it instilled in me this belief that I don't really think he loves me. He keeps abandoning me. And then when I was 8 years old, he left for good. Well, not for good, but for a really, really long time. I remember sitting down, watching pictures on the TV screen and the news articles were talking about my father. And at first it was this excitement of like, oh yeah, my dad is a superstar, he's a celebrity. But then next to it started listing all the different crimes that he had committed, been charged with, from possession and intent to sell drugs, evading arrest, aggravated assault, attempted homicide. And here I am craving the attention and love from this man, and I don't even know who he is. It was hard, as you can imagine, living a life like that, but school is my refuge. School is the place where I could go, where I knew things were going to be consistent, predictable, where it was going to be safe. Safe schools are important for our children. Talk a little bit more about my family. That's little me at like 4 or 5 years old, looking real cute. Yes, I grew into that head, so that's real good. But that's my mom right there. Then she later she had me at 14. She had my sister, Secret, on the right at 24 years old. So she's 10 years younger. My little brother, Demo, he is now 17 years old. So he will laugh at that picture when I show him that. But that's the fam right there. That's who I grew up with. My dad, he eventually got out of prison and we became best friends. 18 years old, I wrote a song to him that outlined all of the harsh realities that it was like growing up without him in my life. And it made him cry. It made my mom cry. It made my brother's moms cry. And it started to unite us in a way that had never been done before because I expressed that vulnerability to him. Those are my brothers, Man and Jared. I'll say those two, they're my lifelines because we experienced so much of similar life. We didn't live in the same household, but we went through a lot of the same struggles. And when we got an opportunity to be together, we were together. And I think I'm the man that I am, and I'm able to be up here today because them and those two little ones up top. But I often get asked, what sets you apart? What makes you different than all the people from your neighborhood, than your siblings, than all the friends? What makes you different? And I have never been able to answer that question until doing research and understanding that really what it takes is people. Those two people right there, my grandparents. When my dad was in prison, they stepped up. Those are his parents, and they were the most nurturing and loving people that I ever met in my entire life. Right? I knew that even for a brief moment, with all the chaos that was happening at home, I could come and be with them and things would be okay. A weekend, a summer, extended period of time over Christmas break. that was my buffering experience that helped me persevere as a young child. I'm gonna leave them up here for a minute as I continue to talk, but again, education was a big part of my life. I got in a program called Backfield in Motion, which was started by NBA alum supporter Joe Davis. Rest in peace. Joe Davis started a program because he recognized as he was coaching a team in the projects that there was very little support for his students. Parents didn't show up to games or practices. It was even hard to get his students or his players to the games themselves. And so he created this organization, Backfield in Motion, to eliminate all those barriers with transportation, tutoring, food, everything that you could think of, free pads, free everything. And I was a proud participant in that program. And through that program, found out about MBA. I was brought to the school for a football game by one of the tutors. His name was Justin Elliott. I'll never forget it. First time walking on the campus, I was amazed by all the buildings and the green space. But the thing that stood out to me most was so many white people, y'all. I had never seen that many white people in my life, and I've been here my entire life. I'm just like, whoa, okay, it's a whole different world over here, right? Whole different world. But I get there and I'm enjoying the environment. I'm enjoying the passion and pride for the school. Fast forward process, and I'm going through admissions in 8th grade. I'm enrolling at MBA. It was amazing because I set a goal for myself after that football game. I remember putting the program of that game in the cover of my binder, and I would just look at it every single day and like, I'm going to be on this one day. I'm going to be on this one day, and it happened. But that transition from public school to private school in the 8th grade, back in 2004, was the hardest transition of my life. It was the biggest culture shock of my life. I've been to Thailand, I've been to Greece, I've been all over the world, but still to this day, the biggest culture shock was driving 5 miles across town to come here. In fact, I got a little anxiety on my ride over here today. And that before we even started school, there was a assignment that we had to do that was unlike anything that I ever had. We had summer reading. And mind you, 8th grade, I haven't read a book cover to cover in my entire life, and I'm expected to read 4 in the course of a summer. I didn't know about Spark Notes either. So I did it, turned in my paper, but in the essays had clear instructions. I want you to write all your answers in Times New Roman, 12-point font, double spaced. Okay. So I get to my computer, well, my grandmother's computer. We didn't have a computer at the time, and I started typing. V, space, boy, space, ran, space, across. And that's how I double spaced my entire paper because I had never had to write anything on a computer before, right? It was amazing to me that something so simple was so foreign to me. But you got to think, coming from the background that I came from, like, I'm not expected to know how to do that. Double space. When I got to school and I saw that people's papers were, their lines were that much far apart, and I had written twice as much as they had with a whole bunch of red squigglies across my entire paper. Like, I was pissed off. But again, that first year was a doozy. I remember in English class, I had a great teacher, Miss Pettis. Miss Pettis was my homeroom teacher. She was so caring and so kind. But I remember there was an assignment where we had creative writing. And I chose to take a page out of my own story and wrote about kids who came from my neighborhood playing basketball in the AAU tournament. And I talked about how this guy, D'Angelo, hit the game-winning shot at the national championship in Orlando, Florida. This was all made up because we were terrible, y'all. But creative writing. But he hit the game-winning shot and was carried off the court on everybody's shoulders. And I got a good grade on the paper, but I also got a comment from Ms. Pettis that said, carried off the court on people's shoulders. Came back home to Nashville and told his mom about the game and about winning the championship and how he was the hero of the story. She looked at him and she was so proud. And the comment that I received on the paper was, great story, but I find it unrealistic that D'Angelo's mom wasn't at the game if it had been the national championship. Unrealistic was my reality. Unrealistic for me was having someone up in the stands that I could look up to that was supporting me through all of those things. And so it got me thinking about, again, the two separate worlds that I was living in and how what I thought was normal and real and what you thought was normal and real were totally different things. Not that either one was right, but they were different. It got me thinking about that. And so I'm going through this year and I'm looking at everything and I'm trying to understand what Wallabies are and I'm trying to tell them what Jordans are. And it was a whole struggle. I got to the end of my 8th grade year and I was like, listen, I can't do this anymore. Academically, I can handle this, but socially, culturally, this is just absolutely too much. So I decided I wasn't going to come back for high school. I made that decision and I called a couple friends, and as soon as I got off the phone with a friend, I get a call from my mom. Oh my God, no, we can't have you leave. No, please don't leave. I got a call from my dad. Hey, Reggie, can I come see you? Absolutely. This man shows up to my house. This is a big old dude, stoic in his posture, and we're sitting in his car and he's like, you can't leave. And he starts crying. And I'm wondering why in the hell this grown man is crying about where this 9th grader goes to school next year. And I'm thinking, it's just because I can play football, I can jump, I can run, I can do those things, right? They want me for athletics. But then he said something that changed my entire perspective. He said, Reggie, my son's life is going to be better because of your presence. This school is going to be a better place because you're here. Up to that moment, I had never heard those words. It was all about how me, as the poor kid from the hood, was going to benefit from this environment. How I was going to be the recipient of all the charity and then have a better life because of this environment, but never what I brought to the table, the value that my presence brought. And with those words, I decided that I could make a difference. So I came back to, got to experience time with some of my absolute best friends to this day. All but one of my groomsmen in my wedding were from MBA. Graduated from MBA, and it was a momentous occasion because neither one of my parents had graduated from high school. So here I am stepping into a whole new chapter of life. Go to Vanderbilt University, study economics, walk on to play football for Bobby Johnson and James Franklin, two of the greatest coaches I've ever had. Then I get to the end of my college career and I'm at a loss because my dad's so dope. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I didn't do any internships. What do? So I go back to school. Got a master's in accounting from the Owen Graduate School of Business. Studied and passed the CPA exam all in one summer. Became an external auditor. I hated that shit. No, I'm kidding. It was a great job. It was a great job. I loved Deloitte. I worked for Deloitte. It was a great company, but the work just wasn't fulfilling and passionate and driven for me, right? We need auditors to protect our credit markets. We need that. But after a couple years, I decided I wanted to change it up, and I got into wealth management. I worked in wealth management for a couple of years before starting a firm of my own called Rose Creek Wealth Management. The name derives itself from the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete. See, through all the perceived impossibilities, its tenacity helped it reach the sun. With poor soil, no light, no water, right? It rises and we see it grow. And we might see that the rose is leaning to the side a little bit and it has damaged petals, but we don't talk about that. We marvel at its tenacity. because of all of that adversity, it still succeeded. And I viewed my life as an epitome of that. I am the rose. And then a couple years into that business, life hit. I was recognized as Nashville's Business Journal 40 under 40, 30 under 30, Black 40 under 40. I was nominated for Forbes 30 under 30. And then, why am I on this floor crying? I had done everything right. I didn't drink until I was 21. I didn't go out and sell drugs. I didn't fall into the same pitfalls of all the things that I could have done. I'd done all these things right. Why am I on this floor? That unaddressed trauma from my childhood, I never even imagined that would have the impact that it had on me. So I met a very special person. This is Katie. I met her my junior year in college, and I got to talking with her, and she knew a little bit about my story. When I first told her I went to MBA, she was like, "No way. You are not what I expect from a kid that goes to MBA and then Vanderbilt." But got to learning a little bit about each other, and she introduced me to something called adverse childhood experiences. She had me answer the questionnaire, 10 questions, right, of adversity that is faced within the first 18 years of life, be it physical, emotional abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, household dysfunction. And I'm getting there and I'm answering it and I'm doing a great job because I'm making an A on this test like all the others, right? I get to the end and initially I see that I have 9 out of 10 aces. And in the study, in the ACE study, there's a correlation between the higher the score, ranging from 0 to 10, with the worst health outcomes, behavioral outcomes, social outcomes, mental, all of that later on in life. That's how we got there. And so I started in that moment trying to understand this stuff, right? Understanding that people with 6 or more ACEs, their life expectancy is decreased by 20 years. I want to live. I want to be around. I want to change the impacts of this negative adversity in my early childhood. 67% of our population has at least one ACE, and that creates a risk for all of these things to happen, right? Right. Suicidality is increased by 14 times if you have 4 or more ACEs. If you have 4 or more ACEs, you're 4.5 times more likely to develop depression. And there's the whole host of chronic diseases. But also, adverse childhood experiences make it extremely difficult to build interpersonal connections. Because what you have seen, the lenses that you've seen life in, have been flawed and skewed because all the people that you look at are threats, danger. And that's why it's so important, y'all. It's so important to help our students realize that life can be good. One thing that I did was I got certified. In yoga, a little PG JPEG for y'all. Yeah. Certified in yoga so that I could teach the healing benefits to other people that I had received in my life through this practice. And this is child's pose. And that's usually where I set the tone for the class. Similar to you setting the tone for your classes. And there are 3 things that I make sure that we do in every single class. It's create a safe environment. And I never make assumptions and build genuine connections. And in creating a safe environment, I have to be very intentional about how I do that, right? Because when they're in this position, it's a very vulnerable position for people, especially those who have experienced trauma. I have to tell them, hey, your eyes are closed, your head is down, but I'm watching the doors. They're locked. You don't have anything to worry about. If I ever approach you, I'll make sure to announce myself so that you feel safe in me being in your space. I have to build that safety in them. I have to not make assumptions about what they had, what was happening in their life prior to them coming into the room, right? I don't know what happened. Someone's mom could have passed away. Someone could have just gotten in an accident. Someone who knows, life happens. I can't make assumptions about what it is or what I'm going to see from them. I just have to come in and treat that person like a person in that moment. And then we build genuine connections. And the first thing that we do to do that is breath. And because I'm a little dysregulated right now, can we all take a deep breath? So that's what I want to talk to y'all about today. Creating a safe environment. What does this look like? It looks like maintaining your commitment to physical safety. This has been such an increased priority now with the rise of school shootings and the anxiety that our students feel when it comes to those things, right? Promoting emotional safety as well for healthy development, because our bodies and our minds don't necessarily know the difference between a physical threat and an emotional threat. And when we get attacked emotionally, our bodies scream, protect yourself. We have to survive. And then also the commitment to cultural safety, right? When you walk on the campus, is there something screaming at you that is detrimental to your identity? Is there, conversely, is there not anything on campus that is celebrating your cultural identity? Those things are crucially important. I want to tell a story. First, I'm going to tell a story before we get into that. I was in 8th grade, and I've been trying to figure out the answer to this question, but a lot of people ask, when was the first time you experienced racism? And growing up in the hood, I really can't draw from many experiences because I was surrounded by all the people that looked like me, went through the same experiences as I did. I didn't travel. I didn't get to do many things like that. But the first thing that I can remember from my time here was a guy I call Jake the Jokester. And Jake comes up to me, 8th grade, goes, "Hey, Reggie, you want to hear a joke?" I'm like, "Sure." "What's the difference between a black person and a bag of shit?" The bag. Insinuating that black people were merely waste. I never had my identity attacked in that way. Not that egregiously. And it was so hard for me to wrap my brain around that. So what do we do as kids? We internalize it, make it about us. I am a bad person. I am not worth anything. And that message gets internalized over and over and over. And I didn't feel safe to go into to anybody yet. I hadn't met Annie B or BD yet. Because no one responded when they were jokingly saying, "Come here, boy. Pick this up." Cool. So I'm going to internalize that. It's so important. I want to talk about polyvagal theory because when I learned about this, it really changed the way that I looked at how I responded to different stimuli. Polyvagal theory looks at our autonomic nervous system. It's constantly scanning our environment for threats, right? This is an evolutionary thing. Constantly scanning our body for threat or our environment for threats to see how it's going to respond. Right? You've heard of fight or flight responses, right? Freeze responses. Well, this is all based on the vagus nerve being that signaler to the rest of our body. In a sympathetic nervous system response, hyperarousal, that is the mobilized fight or flight. I got to do something. I have to move. Right? Most of my life has been spent here. Most of my life has been spent here with higher cortisol levels, with higher stress, higher inflammation, and on guard, hypervigilance throughout my entire life. On the other side, there's hypoarousal. We may see this as depressed, lethargic. 2 autonomic nervous system responses, meaning I can't choose either one of those. It happens. It just happens. And so you may see a kid showing up and little Jimmy is ready to fight. Or little Jamie does not want to get out of bed. They're not choosing that. That is something that their body is telling them to do in order to survive, to protect themselves. Where do we want them, though? We want them in the window of tolerance. We want them in the place where they feel safe This is why it's so crucial to build safety, because what happens here? Social engagement. What happens here? They feel like life is tolerable, like they can go through and feel confident about themselves and the things that they do. But what is most important that happens here is learning. If you're in that state or that state, you're not learning, because limbic hijack, meaning your amygdala switches on and everything is about, I got to get ready to fight. You're not in a position to learn.
Hi, I'm Jonna Alexander, and I work for Connections Wellness Group. The main thing that stood out to me about Reggie's talk is the simplicity of connecting with your students and how deep-rooted that is, and how a multicultural campus has so many different diverse entities that go into just that student's identity, and being able to utilize those very simple techniques to understand all of the layers of a student's identity means more than all the degrees that you can get in the world. To be able to just genuinely connect with that student makes a difference in their life. At Connections Wellness Group, we specialize in intensive group therapy, supporting students through that journey and allowing them to have a group environment where they can normalize what they're going through and have real healing in terms of understanding how that flight or fight mode can be enacted, and utilizing those tools and helping them understand what goes on here, and how they are in control of their body, and then how they can utilize that skill to navigate a life where it can be, crazy at times, where they are able to be still and safe in their own being and in their own beliefs so that they can navigate their world. Reggie's words and Reggie's gift to communicate with his audience and his community could benefit schools, churches, anyone that has a heart. To be honest, Reggie connects with anyone that has a heart and that wants to support the next generation.
So if you want to do what your job is to educate the students, you have to keep them in this window of tolerance where they feel safe. How do you do it? If somebody's in a hyperarousal state, it's we did a little bit earlier, right? Breath work, grounding, mindfulness, simple things. Using the tools that we have within us to bring us back down to a calm state. We usually tell those people to calm down, and that's how we do it. Then you have hypoaroused. How do you do that? You get them breath work, mindfulness, but activity. Got to get them moving. Let's take a walk. Let's get up and let's exercise. Let's move. Let's do some different type of breath work that is more activated. Let's try one. So if I'm in a hypoaroused state, I'm really depressed. Let's try this breath. It's going to be a very rapid in and out. Try it with me. Ready? Go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax. Now you can imagine if you came in here tired and you did that for about a minute, you'd be up a little bit, right? Converse is true about the hyper aroused. You need something a little bit more slow. I just show this to show the discrepancies in how our students feel versus how we as educators feel. 68% of the students feel safe at school, while 87% of educators feel that the school is safe. Right? They're seeing things that we're not. They're experiencing things that we're not. Their experience is true and it's real. And we have to be cognizant of that. So how can you do this? Turn mistakes into learning opportunities. I'm big on believing that young people, another way of saying that is they're new people. They're new people to this world. If you're teaching little bitties, or even if you're teaching 17-year-olds, right? These people are new to this world. And all the experiences, we can't make the assumption that they have been taught right from wrong, from good, from bad, and things like that. So let's be that person. Instead of berating them for a mistake, can we teach them and use that as a learning experience? Because what it's going to do, if someone says, "Come here, boy," well, let's use that as a learning experience and show how that is harmful, how that hurts. Because then what does that act as? A buffering experience for that young child. And one of the things that combats adverse experiences is buffering. if I scream at you because I'm an adult and I have emotions and I say, shut up. But then 5 minutes later, I gather myself and I come to you and I say, that wasn't the appropriate reaction. I'm sorry. Raise your hand if it's hard to say I'm sorry to a young person. It's ever been hard to say I'm sorry to it, right? But those experiences, hearing that positivity helps them in not internalizing all of those negative things. Create trauma-informed, judgment-free zones. This may look like a classroom. This may look like outdoor space, but a place that is trauma-informed, who knows the difference between what is wrong with you and what happened to you. A place where they can go and feel free to express whatever it is they need to express without criticism or judgment, because they need those moments throughout their day to just release. Those have to be on campus. It's going to signal to the student that you prioritize their well-being. And then celebrate differences. Right? If you can celebrate the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes, if you can celebrate LeBron James, you can celebrate Caitlin Clark. If you can celebrate Christmas, why not Ramadan? If there's students on your campus who are representative of different populations, how about we celebrate those so that they feel that they can show up and be represented and feel safe in that? It's just a couple of ways you can do that. Because school should bring a student peace, not pain. Their experience is enriched, not endangered. Never make assumptions. You got to become aware and challenge your preconceptions. I'll talk about this on the next slide. But understand that your best students will also have challenges. Right? I was a great student. But why? School was that refuge for me because I could dissociate from all the other things that were happening in life and focus on school. Because I was seeking external validation because I didn't get the love from my mom or my dad. And so I got external validation from achievements and accomplishments. There's nothing bad about getting achievements and accomplishments, but the motivation behind it was never going to be fulfilled. I'm not going to get that love by getting another award. And lastly, there is no such thing as a bad student. I know some of y'all are like, yeah, right. There is no such thing as a bad student. There's a student who is grieving. There's a student who has experienced trauma. There's a student whose parents just got divorced. There's a student who didn't have anything to eat last night. There's a student who is crying out for help. And how do they do that? Because they're not emotionally mature enough to tell you. It comes out through their behavior. There's no such thing as a bad student. There are good students who may do bad things. There are good students who are crying out for help. Quick on implicit bias. Right? Becoming aware of your preconceived notions is not the end all be all, right? It's just awareness. Build awareness around our blind spots so that we can then start to address those, make corrective actions, right? Think about this. 70% of us associate males with science and females with liberal arts. So how does that inform your education to that young person? How does that inform you when you're grading a little girl's science paper and you have these implicit biases acting on you, right? Prefer white to black. And again, this is even in the minority or the less preferred category, these still hold true. So the majority of us will view white or have a preference over white to black. So how does that impact how you are showing up for those students? Again, without judgment to yourself either, just understanding that they play a role so that then you can be more intentional about combating those issues. I have a story about this. This is a little me at my 5-year birthday party. Rocking my Jordan jersey with my dad. And my dad got out of prison when I was in the 10th grade. So exciting. So exciting to be reunited with my dad and to be able to live the life that he had written about in all the letters that we talked about through the phone when he was in prison. And then one day, 9 months later, He calls me right before I'm coming to school. And he goes, you know I'm locked up again, right? Dropped the phone. I dropped to my knees. I cried. I cry as I get into my car and I drive to school. And I start hitting up the steering wheel. Why? Why don't you love me enough to not do what you just did? Why can't you be here? Why do I have to deal with all this? Why is the emotion that I'm feeling reminding me this little guy? I get to school, go to breakfast, and I'm sitting at the dining hall, and I tell my friends, I had a big jug of Gatorade. I'm like, please don't drink my Gatorade. I'm going to go get my food. And I come back, and my best friend is sitting there with a cup of Gatorade. And he's smirking and laughing and just sipping away, and I'm so pissed off at him. At least that's what I think. So I throw a tater tot at his face. And he throws something back. And I throw a biscuit at him. And he throws it back, and then I just pick up my plate and I just smash it at him, and I go over and I start choking him, and then we're wrestling on the floor, and it's just like all this chaos ensued. And if you were outside looking in, you would have looked at that moment and been like, it's a bad kid right there. Why did he do that? Why did he want to fight? Without recognizing that there was something happening underneath. I wasn't mad at my friend for drinking my Gatorade. I was dysregulated because these negative emotions that I carried with me for most of my life have been just lit on fire that morning. So think about that as you see a kid's behavior, because that's how they're going to tell us they need help. How can you do this? And you can scan this QR code. I have a cheat sheet for you all that will have examples of all these different things that you can download and implement at your schools. And also it'll have a kind of a recap of this entire presentation. But creating regulation toolboxes for the teachers, for you all, and the students, right? Self-care. I say self-care is sacred, not selfish. If you're not showing up as your full self, you're not going to be able to give it all to your students. You have to recharge. You have to find ways to help you regulate. And same, do that for your students. This could be a great assignment for you all toward the beginning of the year. I think mindfulness and breathing is something, again, that gets you back into that calm state, gets you back into that window of tolerance on both sides, whether you're high or low, creating mindfulness. Just imagine if I get out of the car, wipe my tears, and I come in, and the first thing I have to do is sit down and take some really deep, calming breaths and remind myself that I'm in a safe environment, that I'm not in the hood, that my dad is not right here right now. Like all of those things. Things might have been a little different that day. And then I think because playing sports, there's always a physical before you get into the sport, right? But there's never been a baseline exam or a baseline measure of where I am emotionally. I've never had to do that. So how am I going to know? How are you as a teacher going to know if I'm dysregulated or not if you don't know anything to compare it to? So I think it's important to administer those baseline evaluations. And then a bonus one is just mental health days, because sometimes we just need a break. These kids are smart. These kids are going to do well. They're going to go and succeed, but they need breaks. And so how can you make it where there's excused absences so that they can take care of whatever they need to take care of? Right, the assumptions that once protected us from threats and danger now prevent us from connecting and understanding. When there was a bear in the bush, we needed to assume that it was going to kill us. But when we see a person walking down the street, we cannot make that assumption. It prevents us from connecting. Making genuine connections. I could talk about this, about learning their names, attend their concerts and games, and understand from where they came. This is important. And I have a friend here who I want to introduce. Her name is Libby Burns. Been friends since college. And she has, as an educator herself, has exemplified these three things to the fullest and then built genuine connections from public school to private school. And I want her to just speak a little bit to her experience and how she's been able to do that. Give it up for Libby, y'all.
I'll stay behind this because I feel safe. So thank you, Reggie, for saying that. I started teaching in the worst quote-unquote public school in Nashville. I've taught in private schools. I teach at MBA now. I'm an academic support coordinator here. As my students say, I'm the person who helps kids get better at school. So that's what my 10th graders say. But basically what I did last night was I texted some of my former students who are now 25, 26, 23, which makes me feel terribly old. But I asked them, what has changed your life? What have teachers done? And one kid, it's gonna make me cry, but he said, assumed that even though I came from a bad place, that I wasn't a bad kid. And made it better. And so the third bullet point, understand from where they came. We have kids, even in these independent schools that we all work in, where you can't assume that because he's the valedictorian that he's not going home to abuse. Okay. So things that I do, tangible things, so I just keep crying. I give surveys at the beginning of the year, super basic, super childish, and I ask kids' favorite songs and I listen to their songs. I ask their favorite candy and I get them that candy for their final exams. I write letters to every single kid I've had. Last year I had 175. I write a letter every year to every kid. I have a kid who was a bad kid in the private school. He now makes millions of dollars being a YouTuber. He was kicked out of school for his YouTube videos, and he still has my letter in his bulletin. I mean, it is like just most simple things, attending games, but not only going to the games, but writing down in your phone, what did that kid do? Maybe they had a goal. Maybe they defended really well. But having tangible things that you can walk away with and tell those kids the next day, hey, that number 9, he really had you, but you did great. That changes everything for these kids. And I just got a text message, I was sitting in the back. One of my students said, I changed careers, I'm not gonna be a teacher, I hope you're not mad at me, I'm a commercial pilot now. I'm not mad, can you buy me for free? But just really, really small things. And I have tons of ideas like that, but from surveys to letters, it's the simple things and it's the lack of assumption. Just take the assumptions out of it and having those simple conversations with kids. For the difficult kids, they're looking for you to build trust. So they're looking for you to constantly say, how's your day going? Did you watch the Super Bowl? Who'd you cheer for? What's your bracket look like? And if they don't respond, be persistent. Because they're looking for you to build trust and invest in them. That's all I got. Sorry.
Two people who exemplified that for me. B.D. O'Connell, Annie B. Williams. I'm celebrating my 15th anniversary or reunion this year, and I still keep in touch with them. I still see them. We still hang out with each other. I go to their houses, and it's just love. It's family because they exemplified that. And I think you all can be that one for a student or for multiple students. And I just want to thank y'all from the bottom of my heart for loving me the way that you did. One thing that Annie B didn't know about those times when she would come up the stairs and see me working was like, that was my place of getting away from all of this. I didn't want to be here. I could do work. Work was fine for me and work was restoring for me. But being around people and being in environments, it just didn't feel safe for me. And so she applauded me for being up there, but I was hurting during those times. I appreciate both of y'all from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. You heard it from Libby. But be authentic, right? And one of the questions that I think you all should ask yourselves or ask others is, what is my style of relating? Because I think we have an idea of how we come off and how authentic we are and how we relate to our students. But maybe have another teacher sit in your class. Maybe have other students in your class and then ask them and be okay with the response. How do I relate? How do I come across? Because you might think you're the most genuine person in the world and everybody else thinks you're an asshole. And let me tell you, if that's what they think, you're an asshole, right? So ask and be receptive to that feedback. This is important, y'all. Students who are loved at home come to school to learn. Those who aren't come to school to be loved. A lot of students need love. I'm gonna wrap this up, y'all. This is what we talked about today. And I wanna close out the poem that I wrote. But first, the single most common factor in helping a student build resilience through adversity is just one caring adult. Do y'all feel like y'all could be that one? Yeah, everyone say, I'm the one. Louder, I'm the one. Put that student in your head and say, I'm the one. Be the one. Be the one. Because if not, you'll retire in a world that is run by your students. Right? Right now is all we have because the past no longer exists. And the future never was. So right now, this is it. They ask me why I do what I do, and this is what I tell them. I get on stages and I talk about my pain so that nobody has to feel them. Because the pain from my past does not dictate the present. And the fear of the future only worries me if I let it. All I have is now, a moment to share with you, to tell you about my past and all the things I went through. Abused and neglected, a lot that's hurt me. But I rise above it and your students can too. Just keep working. Take losses and turn them into lessons. Give grace and give back. That's the way to many blessings. Speak with conviction and love with no conditions. Stand tall, stand proud, and unlearn unhealthy traditions. Let me say that again. Speak with conviction and unlearn unhealthy traditions. Follow your passions. Fall in love with the vision. Stay firm in all of your intentions. And trust that the results will be a byproduct of the work. And don't bottle up emotions. Please don't bottle up emotions because, as we know, bottles can burst. Create the life you choose to live and surround yourself with those you love. Give thanks for every breath. And linger with every hug. Because all we have is now, this moment, this day. Spread light and love everywhere you go and tell people that's the Tennessee way. Thank y'all.
I'm Sally Bear, and I'm the director of Student Services at Born Bloom Jewish Community School in Memphis. The talk that you gave was absolutely amazing. You reached all the educators and all of the counselors in the room, and I would love to see that message being shared with every educator across the country.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wilson. I'm the director of the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools. Well, I think personally there was a huge impact in terms of thinking about my own practice as a teacher in the past and in the future. I think professionally, though, and thinking about it from the standpoint of securing an excellent speaker for our organization, for professional development for our members were wrapped. You had them in the palm of your hand. And I think the talk was incredibly personal and relatable. So people were immediately deeply connected, but it was so high level in terms of taking from different relevant research, and not just to put the research out there, but putting the research forth and then providing incredibly easy, just hassle-free, pain-free ways to apply the research in daily practice in a way that makes teachers and educators feel more confident about their ability to help students persevere and to find their self in their schools, and also just so actionable and relatable. So I really appreciated that. I think the beauty of the talk is that it was great for a room full of 25 people, but could also be great for a room of 2,500 people. The ability to hold, engage, and capture the audience was really powerful. I love the wide-ranging applicability. So it could be for a teacher of a 3-year-old, to a head of school, to a business officer, a counselor, anyone working at a school with children of any age. The tips were so hands-on and relatable, easy to approach. The talk was memorable. There were a lot of what I was calling mantras. So people walk away remembering key points and the action steps that go with them.